So guess who finally went and saw Infinity War?
Who?
James.
James.
So now everyone in the world has seen Infinity World.
Infinity what?
Infinity Worlds. It never ends. Welcome to Higurashi when they cry Tatarigoroshi.
Get over it.
Build a bridge and shut the fuck up.
Hey, we just fell off a bridge.
Yeah, speaking of bridges, we're at the bottom of one. And, okay, so
we learned
there's more.
There's another chapter.
So, let's just go. Let's just get
into it.
All right, let's just do this.
You ready? You got it.
Don't touch me. Okay. So we survived. Or did we?
But why are the rocks like boom?
Why is the water
Ow.
Why is the water not moving?
Oh, there it goes.
I hear it, but I don't see it. My head was pounding.
I'd imagine.
The sky was bright. It was cold, too. It hurt. Each sensation I felt led to a new and different one awakening. When I came to, I was lying face first on a dry riverbed. A few body parts hurt a lot. The skin over a bunch of my joints was torn, turned blue or red or oozing blood. I could tell it was my bones that were in pain from the agony I felt whenever I moved. I looked up and saw how high the bridge from which I had fallen was. Considering I dropped from there, it was a miracle that I could open my eyes again.
Yes.
Right next to me was a broken, upside-down car seat, which I guess some pranksters had brought here. Maybe this thing had been conveniently lying right under me, allowing me to escape instant death. Miraculous. Of course, I didn't know whether this miracle was fortunate or unfortunate. I'd failed to die, and now I was still stuck in this insane world. How long I had been unconscious for? The sun was high in the sky, so it looked like only 1 or 2 hours had passed. But my body, sluggish, didn't make it feel at all like so short a time had gone by. Mentally, it felt like I'd been asleep here for a decade. Ow! Ah! The more feeling returned to my body, the more pain flooded in. It hurt so much it would have been better not to have woken up. I needed to get a doctor. Yeah, to Coach's clinic. The term Coach's clinic brought memories back one after another, memories I wish I hadn't recalled. Satsuka was no longer on the bridge. She would have returned to Hinamizawa by now. And she would put on some clothes, go to the clinic, get a checkup, and report on how crazy I seemed. The police were waiting for me without a doubt. This time, would they find out for real that I'd killed her uncle and arrest me, or would they just send me to a mental institution like I thought they might? Still, I didn't care which it was. Please, someone stop all this pain. You can boil me or cook me after that, whatever you want. I began to walk unsteadily, just limping along. I went downstream, and then through an animal trail-like path in the woods. I walked haphazardly, searching for a path I knew. Eventually, I finally came across a familiar road, and set off towards the clinic. Not to my house, but to the clinic which had treated me like a lunatic. It was hot and humid. There was no wind, and the air was stagnant. For a while now, I've been smelling the terrible stench of burned eggs, and it made my face scrunch up. And then, at last, I noticed something. I couldn't hear any cicadas. It was the first time I'd heard Hinamizawa be utterly silent. When I thought back, it seemed like birds always chirped in the morning, cicadas always cried loudly in the afternoon, and Higurashi always rose up in chorus in the evening. Always something to hear. I couldn't hear a single insect. The only thing I could hear was the rustling of the wind brushing the treetops. I'd never experienced this sort of quiet before. Even the only sound coming from the trees lacked life somehow. The trees were yellow and many leaves were spread on the ground despite it being too early for autumn. Even the weeds that had been growing so persistently at the side of the road had yellowed brown, lost their vigor. Only the sunlight itself was of the June Hinamizawa I knew. And yet it seemed like the seasons had switched all of a sudden. Looking at the fallen leaves and running weeds led me to a spot a few small insects turned on their backs. They weren't moving. They were corpses. I looked closer to see insect corpses scattered all around, like a child had collected them as samples and strewn them about. The stench. What was it? It was terrible, like burned eggs. Combined with all the bug corpses and leaves falling from the trees in summer. Had someone sprayed herbicides and pesticides around here? Even at school, we apparently fumigate. They call it pest disinfection or something once or twice a year. I hadn't run into anybody despite how bright it was outside. It was mid-afternoon, and yet it felt like I was sauntering about at midnight. Well, with this smell, nobody would want to be walking around outside. Just what was this, anyway? There was no sound, no noise, not even a breath. Hinamizawa was silent. The school would come into view right after turning this corner, and yet I couldn't hear any commotion at all. None of the shouts or grunts that children always made. It was simply quiet. Just as pretending to ignore the silence I'd grown intolerable, I saw the school. And finally I heard something. It was the sound of a few trucks. There were a few very tall trucks parked in the schoolyard, idling. About 10 workers in raincoats were unloading things from their trunks. It was hot and humid even in my casual clothing. I couldn't imagine how unbearable that must have been. And then I remembered. Our school was rented from the Forest Service field office building, wasn't it? It wasn't strange at all for Forest Service trucks to be doing some kind of work in the schoolyard. Besides, what did forest rangers do anyway? I felt bad for them having to work in such heat and with such a stench about. They were taking colorful cargo out of the truck and lining it up in the schoolyard. There were containers, fairly large ones, inside multicolored patchwork bags. Heavy, too. They were being carried in pairs. They lined them up very neatly, like tuna at a riverside fish market. Several dozens, hundreds of tuna were completely filling the ferry-wide schoolyard up. I have a feeling I know what those are.
What?
Bodies. I forgot my pain for a little while, captivated by this big forest ranger job I'd never seen before. As I stood there watching in a daze, the people in raincoats working on the other side noticed me. One of them pointed me out, and they shouted a few things back and forth. I thought they might yell at me for getting in their way, so I decided to leave post-haste. But then 2 trucks drove up behind me. I stepped aside and they entered the schoolyard. Sheets covered their trunks, but I could tell they were completely full. As they passed, there was an awful smell that made me want to choke. Those were definitely bodies.
Yep.
It wasn't the same burnt egg smell as before, but an even worse one, like rotted crab meat. What on earth was it? I've been enshrouded in one terrible stench after another all day. Then, certain white letters emblazoned on the side of the passing trucks caught my eye. Ground Self-Defense Forces. What? Self-Defense Forces? Like the army? Why was the army in the schoolyard? Hey, you! Where did you come from? Suddenly someone slapped me on the shoulders from behind. I turned around, and a canopied SDF Jeep was parked there. The SDF person had on a green raincoat and a gas mask like in the movies, carrying a compressed air cylinder. He didn't look normal. There wasn't an inch of exposed skin anywhere. Where did I... Ow! When I tried to talk, I stretched a wound on my head. It made the SDF people exchange glances. I couldn't see their faces through their mask, but they seemed surprised. Do you live in Hinamizawa? Can you tell us your name and address? Well, yeah, I sort of live here. My name is Keiichi Marabara. Oh, and my address, Hinamizawa Village, Shishibone. After seeing me tell them my name and address without hesitation, one of the SDF people watching from the Jeep started talking into a radio. Base, do you read? Base, do you read? We have an 402 survivor discovered. I repeat, we have a 402... We found a survivor. He's in front of the Forest Service office. This is Base. We copy. Secure the survivor at once. What is his status? Healthy. Wounded all over, but not fatally. He can walk on his own. We'll send him to HQ for safety. I was prepared to go along with the police, but the SDF... I couldn't help but think it seemed a little bit much. They urged me into the back of the Jeep, and then they told me to put on this gigantic gas mask. I did so, and one of the troops fiddled around with it, strapping it tightly to me. It was heavy, hard to see out of hot and difficult to breathe. Just looking at the world through the lenses made it lose its sense of reality. My breathing sounded like some giant monster through the mask. At this point, I had no idea what was happening. With much trepidation, I asked the trooper adjusting my mask, excuse me, has something happened? Where were you? What were you doing? You don't answer a question with more questions. I was the one asking you. I, fell from a rope bridge way back in the mountains. I think I passed out on the riverbed. I don't actually know what day it is. Today is June 22nd, 1983. Wednesday. That surprised me. Savka pushed me off the bridge on Tuesday the 21st. That meant I'd been asleep on the river for an entire day. Forgive me for asking again, but did something happen? Why is the SDF here? Is this a drill?
Oh no. He wished death on Hinamizawa.
And everyone died mysteriously. Mysteriously. Had my question been that difficult for him? None of the troopers would answer me. The one in the driver's seat talking on his own radio turned on the vehicles. He turned the dial and some broadcast station or another came in. I started to listen to the voice of a radio announcer I was familiar with. It was conducted at the Prime Minister's office. In regards to questions from press that the SDF not responding to the disaster promptly was directly related to this unprecedented, unheard of catastrophe, Chief Cabinet Secretary Okino had this to say. And so, I believe that once the SDF received the dispatch order from the prefectural governor, they responded promptly. According to him, the SDF was prompted to respond to the crisis after receiving their orders. He implied that it was the prefecture's responsibility for taking too long to comprehend the situation. When did the governor who requested the SDF's dispatch actually became aware of the outbreak of such an unprecedented catastrophe? And did he not invite further damage because of the time lost before he sent the request for disaster relief? In other words, because of the bureaucracy? We are awaiting further investigation into the matter. That was Mr. Okada, reporting from the Prime Minister's official residence. At this point, we can take another look at the political responses following this disaster. In the middle of the night between June 21st and June 22nd, another new song. A large-scale disaster broke out in Hinamizawa village, Shishibone. The details have not yet been investigated, but there was an eruption of volcanic gas from somewhere in the Hinamizawa area. Demons! Remember? Gas!
Yeah.
Demons. Gas.
Das.
The gas was relatively heavy, and as it spewed out, it began to flow. That flow went down along a small river and headed directly into the Hinamizawa village. After a few hours, it had covered the entire region. It happened in the middle of the night. 2 to 4 a.m. Every home and household in the village was afflicted. With most of the residents asleep, it is thought that all died without noticing the crisis. The catastrophe striking in the middle of the night caused its detection to come too late, but there was still one small opportunity to have noticed it. 3 a.m. A news dealer's shop in Okinomiya sent a vehicle carrying the morning newspaper to its branch office in Hinamizawa. Usually the shop would be contacted upon by the vehicle's arrival, but this morning, that didn't happen. The news dealer's shop made repeated calls but got no response. The shopkeeper sent his eldest son to check up things, but they lost contact with him as well. This is extremely regrettable. If they had contacted the police or fire department at this point, it is highly possible the situation would have turned out more positively. At the very least, it's possible that a portion of the village might have been saved from tragic annihilation. 6 a.m. Residents in areas in the same region began continuously calling 119 to report the smell of rotten eggs, dizziness, nausea, and headaches. The fire department received the same reports, all from the same confined region. They speculated a truck loaded with chemicals may have got into an accident and reported it to the local police. 6:30 a.m. Contact was lost with a patrol car on duty in the Hinamizawa area after the officer reported the smell of rotten eggs. The local police considered the possibility of a large-scale disaster involving highly lethal gas and reported it to the prefecture and prefectural police at 7:15 a.m. 8 a.m. The governor was traveling to nearby prefectures for inspection, so in accordance with regulations, the prefectural environmental disaster prevention chief provisionally escalated to director general and set up a disaster countermeasures office. Other words. However, without contacting the governor, the countermeasures came too late. As he recently been pointed out by citizens groups, his trip with honorary Diet members to inspect other prefectures was based solely on good relations, and it's rumored they preoccupied themselves with a drinking party. Sources closer to him claim the governor had been drinking all night and had gone to sleep in a drunken state. He was completely drunk when the environmental chief phoned him as well, and apparently he could not get him to pay any attention to the matter. So it took about an hour for the governor to sober up, gaining an understanding of the situation and gather information. Though not as extreme as the governor's case, the environmental chief who became director general in the governor's absence will likely also be questioned about his negligence. In addition, without any procedures in place on the prefecture's side that predicted catastrophes this massive, they would always react too late, and that ended up being fatal. 9:12 a.m. On the advice of prefectural police, the governor requested a disaster relief mission from the SDF. By the time the chemical defense unit, equipped with protective equipment, arrived on the scene, 8 hours had already passed since the incident's outbreak. Whatever the case may be, it was unfortunate this happened while everyone was sleeping in the middle of the night. Had the same disaster occurred during the day, it likely would have been entirely different. All households in the Hinamizawa village region were wiped out. There were over 1,000 victims. The SDF is still confirming the situation on the ground, but their results are predicted to only increase that number. Here with us in the studio today is Dr. Fujiwara, a professor at a university, who is well acquainted with volcanic disasters. Doctor, can such a sudden and horrible outburst of poisonous gas actually happen? It isn't at all unusual for this to happen right around craters at least. Japan is a volcanic nation, and so has many active volcanoes. There's always a danger of hazardous gas around any of these craters, and it's generally a rule among mountain climbers not to go near. Does this mean the rotten egg smell that visited Hinamizawa village was the normal sort of gas for volcanic craters? Judging by how it smelled like rotten eggs, we think it was hydrogen sulfide, a gas seen particularly frequently in accidents compared to the other volcanic gases. If it's dense, it becomes extremely dangerous. Hinamizawa village is very far away from the craters of any volcanoes. Can hydrogen sulfide be generated even from a place not close to a crater? I don't know all the details, so I can't say anything concrete, but in other countries there are records of gas eruptions due to magma buildup under hot springs. It's an extremely rare event, but it is possible for such a thing to happen even in a region not near craters. Thank you very much, Doctor. We appear to have an announcement from the Japan Defense Agency. Miss Morikawa, are you there? Yes, I'm at the Japan Defense Agency. The agency has just made an announcement regarding the source of the Hinamizawa village gas disaster. Analysis from the Ground Self-Defense Forces Department of Chemistry has found that the gas was a mixture of carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide. Ms. Morikawa, do you know whether the gas is still erupting or spreading to nearby areas? According to the SDF's 9th Division, who are currently engaged in a rescue operation in Hinamizawa village, the gas density is steadily decreasing. They've announced that the damage will not spread. However, it does not change the fact that surrounding areas are still in danger and that very strict observation must be maintained. That was Morikawa from the Japan Defense Agency. And now we have a report on the state of those who have been made to evacuate the Okinomiya area. Shimo Shinozaki Elementary School is one of the evacuation sites, and we are currently have a reporter on Zine. Wait. What? Inside the jeep, clambering and bouncing along the rough road, none answered my muttered question. An unprecedented catastrophe had destroyed Hinamizawa in a single night? Where was Hinamizawa village anyway? Someplace deep in the mountains, right? Names of places I'd heard about on the radio were always like that. They were all places I'd never heard of, much less knew the locations of. Wiped out? What does that mean? Don't they usually say how many died and how many were injured? How many people were alive? Where did everyone evacuate to? Eventually we came into view of Coach's clinic. For the first time I saw the flag of Japan hanging on a pole outside. Japan's circular sun hung down as though exhausted. Many SDF tents were set up in the clinic's big parking lot, and many strict security vehicles were parked there as well. When they saw the jeep coming in, men in white clothing and gas masks came running out of the clinic, frantic, carrying a stretcher. "We're going to be all right. How do you feel? Can you walk?" "Yes." Ow. Because of my ows, they forced me to lay in the stretcher anyway. People who seemed like doctors were looking at me and notifying others of my condition via radio. "Multiple wounds. High possibility of fractures and internal damage. Large laceration in the head. Pupils normal, but even without bleeding from the fundus, brain damage is still possible. And then, from the clinic entrance, people lying on stretchers were brought outside to replace me. Judging by their clothing, they were from Hinamizawa. That's how I knew they were victims. They brought their stretchers in front of a truck. 2 troops holding shoulders and legs, like some kind of baggage, picked them up and threw them into the trunk. In the trunk of the truck, people's bodies piled in heaps. They were just like baggage, and it told me they were already nothing but shells. At that moment, I remembered all those colorful sacks filling the trunks, and them lined up in the schoolyard like a fish market. Hundreds of empty shells. Corpses. 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 Corpses! You jackasses! Don't just throw the victims in like that! They lived here! Troops carrying the sacks answered me with a humble salute. The world didn't need this insane version of Hinamizawa. My final wish, again, was granted. I didn't understand anything anymore. None of it mattered. I wished, I cursed, and then it happened the next day. Then please, tomorrow morning, let me die. That insane night, it's still going on. Please, please end it already. Huh? Hey, he's lost consciousness. Shout his name, quickly. Marabara-kun, can you hear me? If you can hear me, just blink. Marabara-kun! 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 Suddenly, the world didn't matter to me anymore. I wasn't interested in their cries. His breathing stopped. Get his respiratory tract open. Use CPR. Make him live. Damn it! Damn it! No more dead people. Nobody deserves to die. Don't kill him. Don't kill him! I could hear the voice of a man crying and screaming in my ears. Nobody deserves to die. Those words came from his heart. They were so commonplace. They soaked into my heart, too. Maybe it was a mistake to take someone's life, even if it was to save Satoko. If this is the price I had to pay, this horrible tragedy, then this is a little much, Oyashiro-sama. Why did you never punish me? Come to think of it, Satoko said something. Oyashiro-sama's actual curse never goes for the target at first, but kills everyone they love before that. Oyashiro-sama's curse. It was a convenient excuse I told myself at the very end, that it wasn't my curse that destroyed it, but Oyashiro-sama's. Given that I was in a stretcher, this next bit might have been obvious. But last of all, I realized one thing. Yeah. Today, I had not heard those footsteps following me. Even once. And now, I was liberated. As the cries of the Higurashi, I couldn't have been hearing, filled my mind. Their tearful ensemble was the only funeral march I had. June 22nd, 1983, early morning. A widespread disaster occurred in Hinamizawa village, Shishibone Prefecture. Volcanic gas, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen sulfide erupted from Onikafuchi Swamp, one of the Hinamizawa area's water sources, and spread throughout the entire village. There were 1,200 victims. 20 have gone missing. The catastrophe was unprecedented, forcing local governments to evacuate approximately 600,000 people. According to later investigations, magma pools and hot springs were uncovered directly under Onikafuchi Swamp, and the gas that gushed from it was determined to be the cause of the disaster. In addition, directly after the incident broke out, many came forth claiming this disaster was a curse based on Hinamizawa village legends, first sparking a wave of chaos. There were apparently local legends of a curse spreading of miasma destroying the village, and some scholars believe a similar gas disaster may have happened in the past remained part of these legends. More extreme periodicals suggested this was an extension of the string of freak death incidents that had been happening in recent years in Hinamizawa village, stirring interest in theories about this curse of Oishiro-sama. In addition, relatives of those in Hinamizawa village who had escaped the disaster complained of sickness afterwards and were hospitalized. Some of them even died of unknown causes, further encouraging such extreme opinions. On top of that, several relatives professing to be possessed by Oishiro-sama's curse committed suicide in strange ways. And the impact of the disaster has had on the entire nation can no longer be ignored. Wild visions of terrible toxic gas sneaking around in the middle of the night, killing people, spilled across the country, causing a steady stream of people complaining of insomnia, difficulty breathing, headaches, dizziness, etc. Some who identified themselves as being obsessed began doing odd things. Most of these were mistakenly attributed by the tabloid press. But afterward, some even began to call it a mental issue arising from the Hinamizawa tragedy, the Hinamizawa syndrome. The Hinamizawa village region, the object of all kinds of rumors and speculation, is currently closed off, and even flying overhead is prohibited. The prohibition was at one point undone as a result of the decrease in gas density, but that autumn another gas burst was confirmed, leading to the area being cordoned off again. Word that the area is sound asleep, all traces of its former life and tied to the left and right. Only one survivor remains, Keiichi Marabara, who lived at Hinamizawa village. At the time of rescue, he had some trouble breathing due to fluid buildup in his lungs, but as a result of life-saving procedures, he was kept alive. He's currently in a general hospital somewhere in the prefecture. The press have been asking for him for some time, but all interviews are being refused. What did he see in Hinamizawa? What happened between June 21st and June 22nd in Hinamizawa village? Today he remained silent, unwilling to speak of it. Whoa! These are all deaths! Possibly committed suicide, strangled to death. Strangled to death? Bodies found born to a crisp. Went missing. Forgotten shrine. So these are confirmed deaths.
Yeah.
Everyone died.
I would have to say this is the saddest ending.
What the fuck? Shion killed herself.
Yep.
She didn't die to the gas. Keiichi has been diagnosed with a severe mental disorder. Holy shit!
Damn.
Not an ending I was expecting.
I thought he was just gonna die and then that was gonna be the end of it, but...
I thought he was gonna like crawl out and then someone finishes him off. He survived! The only one!
And this is the first one he survived it.
That's what I'm saying. He actually survived one.
And the only one to survive in that.
That was a very interesting chapter. Well then.
Like I said, these more questions.
It makes it seem more natural causes was the thing that killed everyone, but it's all too convenient. It is way too convenient. Oh, 2003 late summer.
Because that was in 1983, right?
I think so. An elderly couple living in Osaka Prefecture. Why does this seem so familiar? Okay, hold on. Discovered a cassette tape while organizing the possessions of their son who'd passed away 8 years ago. Their son went missing when his fishing boat capsized in 1995. He was 47 at the time of his death. 8 years later, in 2003, they had begun to organize their son's remains in order to organize their minds and came across a cassette tape in question. From 1975 to 1989, the deceased had experienced working as a journalist for a photography periodical, and this tape is thought to have been created during that time. Tomitake?
Mm-hmm.
Possibly? The label on the tape... Keiichi Marabara. It could be about Keiichimaro.
Yeah.
It is thought the tape was recorded during an interview with Keiichimaro Bara, the only survivor of the Great Hinamizawa disaster that occurred in June of 1980. As the only person who lived through the disaster on the night of June 21st, shrouded in mystery, many interested parties attempted to question him, but he never once spoke physically to anyone in a public place. Therefore, the tape caused quite a stir, possibly being of extremely high value. The one interview who talked. Click. It's really hard to talk about stuff when I know I'm being recorded. Please, don't worry about it. Here, it won't be a problem if I do this, right? After this, the sound quality dramatically decreases. Did he cover the recording device with something? Then let's get started. Here's my first question. Keiichi-kun, where were you the night of the great disaster? I had gone behind the shrine, then took a path through the woods for a while. There's a rope bridge there, a little while before you get into the mountains. I fell from there and lost consciousness. Did this happen during the night of the disaster, between the 21st and the 22nd? No. It was the morning of the 21st, on Tuesday. Which means I woke up in the afternoon of the next day. I think I was out for a day and a half. Why on earth were you there? I mean, I'm sure everyone wants to know, but the bridge you fell from that day, a weekday, I might add, was quite far from both your house and the school, wasn't it? Speaking frankly, there are some who say you knew of the great disaster beforehand, and fell from the rope bridge as you were trying to flee the village. This isn't a joke. Please don't be so arbitrary about this. I think it's a terrible thing to say, too. Please don't be offended. Anyway, about the rope bridge you fell from. It was right here on the map, right? The rope bridge beyond the back of the shrine and through the path in the woods. Probably. I never went over there, so I can't say for sure. I guess I just want to know why you were out somewhere you'd never been before on a weekday morning. And then, well, about the riverbed you fell unconscious on. Have you heard the rumors about that being impossible? Impossible. That word. Again? Again. For a little while, Keiichimaro Bara mutters the word impossible several times. Why would it be impossible? You know how the volcanic gas originated in Onikafuchi Swamp. Some scholars did some pretty delicate simulations and modeling and discovered something very interesting. The volcanic gas was heavier than the air. So it went along the ground, flowing into lower and lower places, kind of like what water does. And with Onikafuchi Swamp as its source, they were able to test how much time it would take for the gas to erupt and spread across the whole village. So, well, that riverbed you were unconscious on, the gas, it would have flowed down there. I don't really understand what you're getting at. In other words, if you were really passed out on the riverbed, you would have been in the middle of all the toxic gas that was spreading everywhere that night. That means there was no chance you could have been passed out there. Allow me to be a little more frank. I think that maybe you might be telling a lie. During the Great Disaster, you were hiding in a safe place, keeping an eye out for when the gas got thinner, then reappeared and were secured by the SDF. How about that? Is that right on the mark? For a short time, the journalist presses Keiichimaro Bara further in a teasing way, but all that can be heard are heavy sighs. Even if that was the case, I wouldn't be surprised at this point. What do you mean you wouldn't be surprised? Was this recording really taken of Keiichimaro Bara? Some harbor suspicions. You said it before, didn't you? That it was impossible. Impossible things happen in that Hinamizawa all the time. There are people who shouldn't exist. Dead people end up alive. It's not really that unusual. Never thought I, of all people, would be asked to prove that I was still alive when I was supposed to have died. The journalist and Keiichimaro Bara both laugh for a while. To verify its authenticity, I had others in Marabara family check tapes with his voice in it. However, the sound was not clear, and much time had passed, so the relatives I checked with couldn't remember what he sounded like. I wasn't able to gain any positive proof it was actually Keiichimaro Bara's voice. Alright then, I'll change the subject. What do you think of the debate about whether this disaster was the curse, the 5th year of the serial freak death incidents of Hinamizawa? I don't think it was. I was the curse that year, after all. Huh? What do you mean? What do I was just answering the question. Doubts also remain regarding the date 11/28 written on the tape. The curse... Well, you probably won't believe me when I tell you this. I was the one who caused it. I was the one who wished for the whole village to die. And it happened. What an exciting story. Exciting. I suppose you could call it that. After Marabara Keiichi's failed suicide attempt on a certain August day, 2 months after the disaster, he was diagnosed with a mental disorder and transported to a treatment facility. I was the one who killed Takano-san, and Coach, and Oishi too. At the time, I had some kind of divine power. Yes, I suppose it was like footsteps. Footsteps? Wait, what's that supposed to mean? Have you never heard footsteps before? Tip-tap. Click-click. The facility never allowed any news coverage, so it is extremely unlikely that a tape from the media dated after August 1983 would have had his voice on it. Today, when you're walking around, try stopping suddenly. Something interesting will happen. Anyway, if you hear an extra footstep, even though you'd already stopped walking, you'd better be careful, you know. Yes, I'll be careful. Is what I'm saying really that funny to you? However, the reporter had been criticized for his forceful methods of collecting data while he was active, so there is still a possibility that he broke into the facility and forced Keiichi Marabara to talk. You've been doing nothing but laugh in my face this whole time. You're just like Coach. You pretend to sympathize with me, to listen what I have to say, but your eyes are telling me you think I'm a lunatic. That's not true. No, I can tell. Your eyes are the same as Coach's. Is this truly Keiichi Marabara's voice? The authenticity of this recording is still wrapped in mystery. I never heard the footsteps again after that day. So, I don't think I have that terrible power anymore. Perhaps, right now, right here, I'll wish for you to die. I'll wish for your death, for saying all these unpleasant things. Yes, this time, why don't I decide how you die? Takano-san was burned to death, so... let's go with the opposite. With water. I'll be drowned and die. How's that? 15 years after this tape was created, the reporter, just as Keiichi Marabara had predicted, died in an accident out in the sea. If I'm in top form like I was then, you'd die before tomorrow morning for sure. Now then, I wonder how many days it will take you to drown. You better be careful, you know? Don't go getting yourself killed by some stupid curse I put on you, okay? The recording ends in the middle of Keiichi Marabara's laughter. And Keiichi Marabara, late on the night of 11/30, 1983, 2 days after the interview, he suddenly died from a high fever, cause unknown. Records remain of the strange words he kept giving after pressing the call button the day before he died. An extra set of footsteps.
Chills.
The end.
Is that really the end?
Well, title card. Of course that means it's the end.
Yay!
We did the same fucking thing. All cast review session has become available. Play it, select extra. Okay.
I'm fine. Fuck you too.
You know what you unlocked.
Are we gonna do that, or are we gonna...
We're gonna do it in another video, because we've already gone for like 40 minutes.
Alright.
So, his divine power still in effect. It's not as strong.
He was just like, you're gonna drown.
But he totally predicted it. So that begs the question. The fuck?
Like,
And
what
the
happened?
how?
What happened to him that he could...
Well, one theory. Possessed by Higurashi.
Yeah.
He got cursed. And this curse he managed to turn into a weapon. And kill thousands of people. It is... It's hard to make of what... why it happened.
So were the previous ones the curse as well, but not as crazy?
Well, I think the curse maybe takes different forms. And that it takes the form depending on the situation. Who's cursed and who needs to be removed. I think that's really the indicator, the factors that come into play when it comes to the curse. That are just a fuck ton of coincidences.
Yeah.
So many
still
coincidences.
could be people.
And it could be natural cause. It was mentioned that it happened again a year later. The gas was released and the place was closed off again. There is that. But the coincidence is just all too...
Perfect.
It's just too perfect. Like, the coincidental deaths that every time that he wishes for someone to die, they die the next day. He wishes for the village to die, everyone dies the next day.
And
he survived despite being in it. Like, he was by the water where the gas was being channeled.
Mm-hmm.
And he survived. Super mysterious.
See, you could say it's a curse there, but another theory that I was thinking about, what if someone kept him unconscious? And then
You think, like, had a gas mask and just chilled out with a gas mask on him?
Yeah. And then once the air got thin enough...
But the problem with that theory is someone had to have known that it was going to erupt. Someone had to know.
That's what I'm saying. Like, someone caused it.
Okay, so someone may have caused it to erupt.
And then they knew.
But again, it's just all too perfect that it's the day after he wishes it. It's all too perfect.
Maybe it's someone that's following Keiichi around and he knows...
Hearing his thoughts as he falls to his supposed death? Ugh. I mean,
to pull it off as the curse.
It's quite the master plan, I'll say that. I will say
that.
If someone pulled this off, makes Ocean's 11 look like fucking kids on a playground.
But I will say that it's more believable that it's the curse.
This is a lot supporting the curse theory. There's just so many things that don't seem right, that are too coincidental, that it's leaning towards curse, of course. And we'll see in the after party what the characters like. Well, did you think about this? Did you think about that?
Yeah.
And we want to get straight into that because we don't have that much time.
All right.
I don't have that much time that I want to have.
See you guys.
You have plenty of time.
I have all the time in the world. So let's end it
all the time
and
of the
then
night.
go to the...
Bye. See you in the after party. Woo.